Hello and welcome to Asset Accountant. Today we're going to do a demonstration of all of Asset Accountant's functionalities and features. And my name is Mark Daly, and with me to help me through the presentation is Colin. Hello, Colin.
Hello, Mark.
All right. What we're going to do today is give you an overview of all of, as I said, all the features and functionalities and how Asset Accountant is set up. I'm going to run through some reporting, how we can export to Excel. We're going to do a thorough run through of assets. Being a fixed asset register for accounting and tax, it's pretty important to be able to add assets and sell them. We're going to show you the disposal process and then also taking into account some rather complex ATO tax rules along the way. We're going to run a journal and show you how we can post that directly, in this case, to Quickbooks Online. We're going to do an adjusting journal, which is a powerful feature of Asset Accountant. We'll show you in this example how we treat pools. We have support for many ATO pools. This particular example, we'll be going through the low value pool, and then we will show you how to add a whole new register. So without further ado, I'm going to run into the home screen, which you can see here, which is what you will be entered into once you log into your account. Here's your account name or your company name, Acme Accounting, and for this example, these are all your separate asset registers. If you're an advisor, you might have different registers for each of your clients. In this case, we're going to go Vanderlei Industries Fixed Asset Register number 2. So when I click on that, you are welcomed with the overall summary of all of your assets and asset groups that are in this fixed asset register. So I'll just show you what we've got here. Down this list here, we've got all of our asset groups, which you will find many will be familiar to you. We've got all of our depreciation calculations for this period. Your period selector is up on the top right here. So I'm going to change that to the current period, and all of Asset Accountant's depreciation figures in this grid are updated as we go. We've got purchases, we've got our depreciation for the period, we've got proceeds from disposals, whether it's a profit or a loss, and we've got our accumulated depreciation for the period and written down value. We've also got reports, which I'll get into soon, how we can export, and here's our other functionality for journals low value pool. One other thing I will show you right now is this button, which you will use a lot in Asset Accountant, is toggling between your depreciation calculations for accounts and for tax purposes. Asset Accountant fully supports both regimes. So now I'm going to show you, I've already said that we've got our asset groups here. It's really easy just to drop down. We run by a drop down system. We've got expand and collapse. So if I expand all, we've got all of our assets in the asset register with subtotals for each asset group, also for the entire register. If we want to see the assets in one particular asset group, let's go mobile phones. There we are. We can drop down there and see all of those at that level. From there, we can go into the individual assets as well, if we wanted to go into this iPhone 9. And here's the asset screen, which I'll run into a little bit later. I'll just show you also, if we clicked on any group, we can see group settings. So this is for the asset group, furniture and fittings. We've got 12 assets. Here are all the depreciation calculation. We've got our default rates, which we can set. And here's our integration, in this case with Quickbooks, again, which I'll come to later when we post the journals. And because asset registers might have quite literally thousands of assets, if you wanted to search for an individual asset, in this case, you know you're looking for an IBM, all I've done in the search feature here is put in IBM, and we've got, in this case, a rack mount and a dynamic server. So I think I'll clear that and collapse and get back to our main view. Colin, is there something you'd like to add?
I think that's a great start, Mark. I think what might be interesting is to go through some basic functions like adding an asset, selling an asset, some of the basic functions that fixed asset accountants need to be doing every day.
Excellent. I'll do that. What I might do first is reports.
Great idea.
Should we do reports? Yes. Reporting is again a strong functionality of Asset Account. I'll just briefly run through these. We've got these standard reports: asset summary, asset group summary, disposals, acquisitions. You can choose accounts and tax. I'll choose tax, but You can run these at any period at any time. And here's an example of a report. Shows all assets, all groups, all totals, and subtotals. And if you wanted a more granular export, you can dump your whole register as of that period into Excel or CSV. And as an accountant, you may wish to manipulate that how you see fit. So yes, Colin, let's get into the adding of an asset, which of course is a key functionality of AssetAccountant. So we've got our add button over here. I'm going to simply add an asset. Now, let us say for this example, we're going to purchase a BMW 5 Series. We can put any description in that we like, and this drop down shows our asset groups. Motor vehicles is quite obviously the group we'll put in here. I'm going to say we purchased this car for $100,000, and the date I'm going to select is the 11th of March. There's a reason I'm selecting that. I'll come back to that in a moment. Now, as soon as we've selected our purchase date, our first use date, you'll notice that already here, we've got pre-populated what our default depreciation options are. So we can click the drop down and we can change this if necessary, but we've got the luxury vehicle diminishing value. You can see the other types of depreciation that we support for tax: prime cost, immediate, diminishing value, of course, black hole. You can have no depreciation at all, and of course the Div 43, 2.5%. And here is where you also set your different rate for accounts depreciation. And Colin, do you want to perhaps explain the functionality of tags?
Yeah, so tags can be considered to be custom fields. So every user, I suppose, has their own requirements in terms of how they categorize their assets, and some might want to record serial numbers, others might want to record locations, and the tag system that we've developed really allows you to flexibly define any sort of key value pairs, if you like, or labels and values that suit your business or your client's business.
And there's just some that I've put in there that might be typical for a motor vehicle. So we've got a VIN, a registration number, and a location. So that they would be pretty standard tags, I think, Colin.
Absolutely. But again, they can be whatever you like.
Yeah. All right. And then we could just press save, but I'd just like to show you another powerful feature of AssetAccountant, and that is its recognition of ATO rules and legislation. So if I was to adjust this purchase date and first use date to the very next day of the 12th of March, can I just draw your attention up here? We've got a new option. And that is because the backing business investment accelerated depreciation is eligible from the 12th of March. So here we're given the option to check that box. And down here, you might remember we had all the other options available to us last time. Well, this AssetAccountant has recognized that there's 4 options you might choose given you've applied the BBI. So I'm going to go ahead and apply backing business investment. I'll leave the accounts depreciation as the same and go ahead.
Before you say, Mark, actually, would you mind
sure.
just applying just applying a different taxable use figure so we can demonstrate that feature as well? Given that this is a car, it's conceivable that this car might be used 50% for business and 50% for taxable use.
Very good.
Sorry, for personal use.
So I have just applied the 50% down here at taxable use. Thank you, Colin. Are we right to save? Let's go. All right. Now, here is the screen of our saved BMW. You'll see that we're in the, I'll just remind you that we're in the tax view and we're in the current period of August. And let's have a look at some of these numbers. We've bought the car on the 12th of March for $100,000. AssetAccountant has applied the appropriate and relevant legislated cap limit of $57,581. We have therefore, half of that is circa $28,000, and you'll notice we've applied a 50% use. So half of the 28 is about 14. So our depreciation starts at $14,000, and there's our written down value. And you'll see for each period, 13th of the 3rd, so March, April, May, June, July, August, we've got our relevant depreciation figure. and it is calculated daily. So you'll see if it's a 31-day month or a 30-day month, the depreciation is calculated accordingly. I'm just going to toggle now to the accounts view and just show you, you will get a completely different view. It is as though nothing ever happened with BBI because that is a tax method. So this is depreciating merrily from the first use date of the 12th of March at 8 years and 25% on the diminishing balance method. So our written down value at the end of this period is $88,493 for accounts, but for tax purposes, we've written off a large amount of it because we're allowed to at $25,477. So that gives you obviously a very different amount on your balance sheet should you wish to do so. Colin, is there anything else I should add with regard to?
I think it's a really good summary. We can maybe have a look at a sale before we get too deep into the weeds.
All right, great. Now I'm going to stick with our motor vehicle theme, and I'm going to sell one of the Nissan X-Trails we've got on our register. Now remember, I could go down here and go down and do a manual search, but we're going to be a bit cleverer than that. We know the registration number is AVN. So we've just put that into the search. We've got our Nissan X-Trail 970 AVN. So I'm going to go into that asset. I'm going to collapse. This is a useful feature in AssetAccountant, is being able to collapse and expand your view of depreciation figures. So in the options here, you can see we have sell. So we've got other options here, but for this demonstration, we will sell the vehicle. And let's say we want to sell the vehicle at, let's say we'll sell it in July. We'll sell it on July 10th for $10,000, 10th of the 7th. And here you'll notice that we have, in tax view, we have sold the vehicle. Oops, let me just go to, and I'll just collapse that, go back to tax. And go, here we are here. Sorry, that's what I wanted to find. And we've sold the vehicle for $10,000 and we've got a deductible balancing adjustment of $7,240. So essentially a loss, and that's in the tax view. And if I go to the accounts view, where I was before, we'll see exactly the same amount because it's depreciated the same.
And viewers might notice that our reversal button has changed. So previously we had a reverse opening balance button that you could perhaps rewind to and have a look at. And now we've got a reverse sale. And the reason for that is that AssetAccountant only allows you to reverse the most recent transaction, and we record all of those reversals. So we might have a look at that feature as we go along, but it's important to note that all of those transactions are tracked and all of those reversals are also tracked. So you can later attribute them to a particular user.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll come to, you'll see another option here for transfer, but I think we'll cover that a little bit later when we run into the low value pool demonstration. So I might move on now to journals. We might run a journal here. So when you click on the tab up here for journals, you would have ordinarily a list of all of the previous journals that you had created and posted. Now, this will be the first journal that we're running. So to the right, I'm going to create. I'm going to do a journal for July the 31st. So the 1st to the 31st of July, you'll see AssetAccountant creates a description for that. I'm going to go ahead and create that journal. So AssetAccountant has every single asset group, and you'll see motor vehicles has more entries, but this is the entire journal for the period. And we can easily post this to QuickBooks Online. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And here we are. We've got successfully posted. View this journal in QuickBooks Online, which I'm going to do. And without doing anything else, with this integration, is a click of a button, all of your journal entries are now posted. There is nothing else for you to do. So I'll just wait for this to come up from QuickBooks. And here we are. For the 31st of the 7th, our journal date, all of our movements are appropriately written against each general journal ledger entry and will be matched on the balance sheet. And there's the note for our movements for the 31st of July. There is nothing else to do. So we might go back to Asset Accountant and we can see here that we have posted a journal. Now I'm going to go back to our assets screen, and before I get into the case of an adjusting journal, quite often if you make a mistake or you have to re-enter something for that July period that you've just run, adjusting the journal means rolling back the previous journal. Not so with Asset Accountant. Asset Accountant will do an automatic adjusting journal, which takes into account any movements or additional movements or transactions that you've made in that period. So what I'll do is I'm going to revisit the car that we sold, which is the Nissan X-Trail. And you might remember that we sold that vehicle. So here it is here with no written down value. There's our sale. So this is where we're going to go ahead and reverse that sale. Let's say we made a mistake that we sold it on the 10th for 10,000, but it actually had to be on the 20th for 8,000. So Asset Accountant warns us that it can't be undone, but let's go ahead and do it. Now all the calculations are readjusted as if nothing ever happened. So what I'm going to do is go again and sell that vehicle now in July. Now on Monday the 20th, you might remember it was the 10th. So let's sell it on the 20th, and let's sell it not for $10,000, but for, ooh, not 80, $8,000. And I'll go ahead and process that sale. And here we've got, you'll notice, a larger loss because we've sold it for less money. And we've also got extra depreciation because we sold it on the 20th and not the 10th. So that clearly makes a difference to the journal that we'd previously posted. Colin, before I go and move on to the adjusting journal, is there anything I should add there?
No, that's a really good summary. I think we can show and hide reversals as well. So if you find that your transaction list is looking a little bit messy, you can always tidy it up to look at the ones that actually have been applied.
That's a good point. And I forgot about that. And that's what Colin's talking about here, is we show a whole history of what has been done with this asset. And if you've done a few reversals, and you can choose to hide that from the grid just so that you see the numbers that matter. So I'm going to get out of this and I'm going to run back to journals, and I'm going to create another journal for that same period. Asset Accountant's prompting us for the next period, which is August, but let's go back to July. You'll see that we've got a notation that this is the second journal for the period, and I'm going to create. Here you will see Asset Accountant has only made the adjustments to what was posted in the previous journal. And the most obvious figure here is that we've sold the vehicle for $2,000 less than we thought. So it's actually another cost of $2,000. So motor vehicles is the only asset group that's had anything affected. And you'll notice that we've got some more depreciation as well because we sold it on the 20th and not the 10th. So I'm going to go ahead and post that to QuickBooks Online. Click on this and show you the adjusting journal. And I just remind you that there is nothing else to do. You don't have to go and unpick the previous journal entry. Asset Accountant has done all the thinking for you. You can just move on to the next period. And there it is there. And it's got the notation that that is the second journal for the period. And on our summary of journals, there's the first and the second. Okay.
Might be interesting at this stage just to have another look at the View Assets screen, Mark, if you wouldn't mind, just so that we can kind of see how Asset Accountant immediately updates your view as additions and disposals are made. So we can see that disposal that you've just recorded in that August period for 8,000 and the appropriate profit and loss against it.
Yeah. And that's that part. And then of course, purchases, if we were to purchase assets, we would see them over here also for that period. So that's a very good point. I might move on to low value pool. Now, like I said before, there's all sorts of options that you can choose, the small business pool, or in this case, the low value pool. Here is your overall summary grid, and we've got views of every single screen we might want to see. So balancing adjustments, transfers, opening assets. This is broken into financial years. It shows you transfers in each financial year, what your opening and closing balances were. But most importantly, AssetAccountant will show you, this is the current financial year, that you've got 13 eligible transfers. So if I click on here, AssetAccountant prompts you that you've got 13 assets that have dropped under the $1,000 threshold as of the 1st of July of the period or of the financial year. So we can just go ahead and transfer these into the pool. If I go back to our reconciliation, you'll now see that we've got 10 eligible transfers and all of the figures are appropriately adjusted. So with the current closing balance. We can toggle here whichever financial year we want to have a look at. I'll just look at the current financial year. This will show us our openings, our additions, our transfers. You'll see that I transferred 3 and here they are here. Any adjustments, which isn't applicable for this particular example. Here's what we have in the pool. And this tells us how many eligible transfers we still have. And there's 10 out of the 13. We could go ahead and transfer those as we chose. And Colin, what else should we discuss regarding low value pool?
Look, I think that's a really good summary. I think if we were to go into an asset, say, if you were to choose an asset from the View Assets screen.
Yep.
And perhaps just expand your computer equipment, maybe find one that's worth more than $1,000.
There we are. Adobe Creative Suite.
Yep. So you'll notice down the left-hand side, there's a transfer button, which is where we facilitate transfers to the pools that you have enabled on your register. So if you want to click on that, Mark, and let's just imagine that we want to transfer it as at the 1st of July, 2020. Okay, so we can see that the system has worked out what the written down value of that asset is as at that date, which is $2,046.88. And we've supplied a warning that to qualify for transfer to this pool, you should really only be looking at assets that are valued at less than $1,000. But we don't forbid you from doing that. So there are often exceptions to the rule when it comes to the treatment of pools and the treatment of any method within AssetAccountant. So our approach is generally to advise and not force, or to warn and not forbid, if you like. So we like to keep you abreast of what those rulings are, but we allow you to make whatever decision that you think is appropriate for your register.
Yeah, excellent.
I think it might be good to have a look at building a register from scratch, Mark.
I think so. That might be, you might recall this is the very screen, your home screen for your organization. And these are our current registers. So let's go ahead and we can add a register. MO client, fixed asset register. And if you're an advisor, you might like to match that with the entity name. This is for Australia. So far, we support Australia and New Zealand. We can choose which entity type is appropriate, and there may be different rules associated with each type of entity. And our reporting year end typically is 30th of June in Australia. However, if your company reacts to an overseas mandate, you can change that appropriately. But generally, it would be 30th of June. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as a new register. Here's our integrations. Right now, we're invited to connect to QuickBooks Online, which I will show you how to do. And here we can toggle whether we've got low value pools or small business pool. You'll notice that they are mutually exclusive. You can have one or the other, but you can add a software pool also. These are the pools that are currently supported. And I believe we've got others in the pipeline, Colin.
Yeah, project pools are in the pipeline at the moment.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and save our settings for this register. Now, if I go to the assets for our register, you'll see AssetAccountant has prompted you to create either an asset group from blank or from a template. I might go ahead and just show you that we've got all these templates that automatically produce default asset groups for you. And you notice we've got what are the typical tax rates and accounts rates for each group. I'm going to go now to asset imports. I'm going to do a new import, and we're going to choose a file here. And I'm going to upload this Excel spreadsheet. Here we can see that the company's fixed asset register, all written down values are current to the 30th of June 2018. Asset Accountant prompts you for exactly that. So I'm going to select that date. Now, Asset Accountant is able to map fields to your spreadsheet. And you'll see here we've got the standard asset name, description, asset group. And I'll just do a drop down. And if the fuzzy logic engine in Asset Accountant didn't match the right group by chance, you can actually manually choose which column is what you intended to be for asset groups in this example. And you'll see, oh, sorry, Colin, you're saying?
I was just going to say what you were going to say, which is the items that you're seeing in parentheses there are actually data that are drawn from your spreadsheet, so that without having to open up that spreadsheet separately, you can have a look at the sort of data that's in the column that we've found and decide for yourself whether that's the right column mapping.
Yeah, perfect. So I will leave that one as it is. So we're just mapping all the fields here. Here's our depreciation methods, life and rate, and our opening written down value, our accounts field. And here, I think this is what you were alluding to before, Colin.
Yeah, so we've created those groups from templates, but if they didn't happen to exist in the system, you'd be given the opportunity to create that group on the fly. So if you hadn't gone to the trouble of configuring all of your groups in the first place, or if you had groups that were very different to the templates that we've suggested, we will actually create those during the import process for you.
Yeah, and in this case, mobile phones is its own asset group.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so Asset Accountant, all of the others were in there and mapped to the template groups, but mobile phones is not. So Asset Accountant will create that group. I'll just go ahead and click next. Here are our tax rates, or methods, sorry, for accounts and tax. And this is an overall summary. We've got 90 assets. Are we ready to process? I'm just going to go ahead and process this. And if we go to the asset screen, it is as simple as that. We now have a fully functional asset register. Here's the asset group that was created for us. You might notice mobile phones with the iPhones that are actually in that group, and all of our figures relevant for this register. And it might be worth, what do you think, Colin? Do you think we should just briefly run into the integration piece with asset groups? Why
don't we have a look?
Okay, so I'll go, what's a good one? We were talking about mobile phones. Let's go to mobile phones. So here's our asset group screen. You'll notice that because it was imported, here we can put in our rates, and it might be effective life of a phone, might be 5 years, might be less than that. You can choose whatever is the default. And I'm going to draw your attention to, down the bottom here, we've got Connect to QuickBooks Online. This is where you actually map your general ledger accounts for the balance sheet, where our depreciation numbers go. So you'll see here, we're invited to connect to QuickBooks Online. I'll go ahead and do that. What do you think, Colin? If we weren't having a connection, you can manually put in which accounts you wanted to link to, and then you can generate a report to manually put them into your ledger. But with QuickBooks Online, we're going to go ahead and connect in the integrations tab. And because I'm already logged into QuickBooks, we'll get a confirmation screen, and there we are. It's as easy as that. We are now connected. So if I go back to our asset group of mobile phones, you'll see here now, because we are connected to QuickBooks Online, we can now go ahead and without even opening QuickBooks, we can just map our accounts. In this case, asset suspense and link account. For our cost, we're in mobile phones, so our cost account might be mobile phones at cost. And we simply map the accounts as such. Accumulated depreciation, mobile phone, accumulated depreciation, and so forth. our depreciation expense. And then when we were doing our journals before, these are the accounts that gets the figures written into.
That's exactly right. And so that's a one-to-one mapping direct to your QuickBooks chart of accounts in this example. So that's the kind of penetration we can have into a general ledger system. And we probably won't demonstrate it, but we can also create accounts directly from AssetAccountant. So if you found that there was a missing account for some reason, we could actually create that directly within the chart of accounts in QuickBooks Online to save you the trouble of having to do it at that end.
I didn't actually show that, but there we are here. And you can add that. And if we were to say we didn't have a suspense account, we can just add that, and then instantly in QuickBooks Online, that account will exist in your chart of accounts. So it's a little bit of a two-way integration. And then we just save that asset group, and that asset group is mapped. So unless I've missed, is there anything else we need to cover today, Colin?
No, I think that covers it really well. We'd invite any questions at any time.
Yeah, thank you. And you can get in touch with us either through the website at asset.accountant, and our contact details are there if you'd like to organise a personal demonstration, or of course, a trial account to give it a test run for yourself. But thank you very much.